Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy my stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. My name is Eric, and not long ago, I thought I was living a dream. I was happily married to my wife, Lila. We lived in the quaint coastal town of Havenbrook, in a charming little cottage just blocks from the sea. Lila was everything to me. A kind, soft-spoken woman with golden curls and emerald eyes that could calm any storm. We had been high school sweethearts and tied the knot shortly after graduation. As our 10th anniversary approached, I often caught myself reflecting on how lucky I was. Our days were filled with warmth, shared laughter, and a rhythm that felt effortless. We didn't have kids yet, but we had our dog, Milo, a scrappy little mutt we rescued from the county shelter. He followed us everywhere like a furry shadow and completed our little family. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where everyone knew your name. Lila would bake banana bread for the neighbors on weekends, and we'd host BBQs in the backyard every summer. Across the street lived old Mr. Granger, who was always tending to his flowers. The Welsleys next door had 3 noisy but lovable boys, and a few houses down lived someone special to us both, Uncle Ron. Uncle Ron wasn't actually related to us, but he had been a longtime friend of my late father. Everyone in the neighborhood adored him. A retired firefighter with silver hair and a booming laugh, he had this comforting presence. He'd often sit on his porch in the evenings, carving little wooden toys for the neighborhood kids. He had been alone ever since his wife passed years ago, but he never lost his spark. Ron was like family, always stopping by to fix a leaky pipe or toss a tennis ball for Milo. We'd often invite him over for dinner, and he and Lila had a great rapport. I used to smile seeing them laugh together, completely unaware of what was building beneath the surface. If only I had known how quickly my perfect little world was about to crack wide open. It started subtly. One breezy Tuesday, I left work early to surprise Lila with her favorite dinner. I stopped at the local grocer to grab the ingredients for lemon herb chicken, fresh asparagus, and her favorite angel hair pasta. I couldn't wait to see the look on her face. But when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. Uncle Ron's dusty old pickup truck parked outside. Odd. We hadn't invited him over, and it was the middle of the day. Carrying 2 bags of groceries, I walked in and called out cheerfully, "Hey, I'm home!" The moment I stepped through the door, I caught them on the living room couch, Lila and Ron sitting closer than usual. They jumped up like teenagers caught sneaking out. "Oh, Eric," Ron said, straightening up, clearly flustered. "Didn't expect you back so soon." "Thought I'd surprise my beautiful wife," I said, managing a smile, even as a strange knot formed in my stomach. "What's going on?" Lila stepped forward quickly. "Ron just dropped by to share a new cookie recipe with me. You know how much I love trying new things." She looked away as she spoke. Her cheeks were flushed, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. "That's nice," I said, trying to keep things casual. "Well, I'd better get started on dinner." Ron made a hasty exit, and I busied myself in the kitchen. But I couldn't stop my mind from spinning. 2 teacups were drying in the sink. Lila was oddly tense, and when I leaned in to kiss her cheek, she stiffened instead of leaning in like she always did. Something wasn't right. Over the next couple of weeks, I started paying more attention. I came home early some days, inventing reasons to drop in unexpectedly. I wanted to believe I was being paranoid. But there were signs, subtle ones. Lila's sudden change in mood, her hesitation whenever Ron's name came up, her forced smiles. Then came the Saturday that changed everything. I woke up earlier than usual and decided to walk down to the bakery and surprise Lila with fresh cinnamon rolls. As I strolled past Uncle Ron's house, I saw him out front, trimming his rose bushes. He spotted me and waved a bit too eagerly. "Morning, Eric," he shouted. I forced a smile and waved back, but I didn't stop to chat. When I got home with the box of pastries, I slipped in quietly. That's when I heard hushed voices coming from the kitchen. I crept down the hallway and peeked around the corner. There they were, Lila and Uncle Ron, standing way too close at the counter, talking in low tones. Her head tilted up toward him, eyes locked. His hand brushed hers, and they both chuckled at something I couldn't hear. The way they looked at each other was all I needed to see. Lila flinched when she noticed me watching. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in," she said almost too quickly. "Ron just dropped off a pen I let him borrow." "I see," I replied, my voice colder than I meant. An awkward silence followed before Ron mumbled something and left in a rush. Lila tried to act like everything was fine, pouring us coffee and chattering about weekend plans, but the illusion had been shattered. My gut told me what my heart didn't want to admit. My wife was slipping away and into the arms of someone I trusted like family. After that Saturday morning, my world began to tilt. I tried to shake it off, convince myself that maybe I'd misunderstood what I saw. But deep down, something had broken. Lila wasn't the same, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. There were moments where she'd stare off into space, flinch at my touch, or seem distracted when we talked. Every time Uncle Ron's name came up, she'd tighten up like a violin string. I had to know the truth, and if it was what I feared, I needed proof. Over the following weeks, I began to play the part, the loving husband, none the wiser. But behind the scenes, I watched her like a hawk. I noticed every phone call she took behind closed doors. Every message she smiled at and locked her phone after. And every time that rusty pickup of Uncle Ron's drove past our house, she'd peek out the window like a teenager checking for her crush. Then came the day I couldn't ignore it any longer. It was a Tuesday. I left for work as usual, kissed Lila on the cheek, and told her I might be working late. "Big campaign deadline," I said. She nodded, barely hiding the flicker of relief in her eyes. Around 11 a.m., I parked my car a few blocks away and crept through the alleyways, circling back to the house like a man preparing for battle. I crouched near the back fence, heart thudding so loud I feared they'd hear it. Carefully, I made my way to the kitchen window. The curtain was drawn halfway. I crouched, rose slowly, and peeked in. And that was when the truth knocked the air clean out of my lungs. Lila was in the kitchen, not cooking, not cleaning. She was pressed against the counter, giggling softly as Uncle Ron leaned into her, lips on her neck, hands roaming freely. Her laugh was soft and playful, like the way she used to laugh with me, only now it was for him. I couldn't move. Ron's wrinkled fingers ran down her back, pulling her closer as he whispered something in her ear. Her lips curled into a sly smile as she leaned into his chest. "Oh, Ronnie," she whispered, "you make me feel like a naughty girl." My heart slammed in my chest. My palms went cold. I saw his hand slide under her blouse and the way she arched against his touch. I should have burst in, screamed, dragged him out by his shirt, and made her confess right there. But instead, I backed away slowly, heart splintered. I needed more than just a moment of rage. I needed clarity and undeniable evidence. I didn't want them to squirm out of this with lies. That night, I came home late, like I said I would. Lila was in bed already, pretending to sleep. I stood there for a few seconds, watching her breathe, wondering how many lies she had buried under those blankets. The next day, my plan began. I checked her phone when she showered. Nothing. She had wiped it clean. So I dug deeper. I installed a hidden voice recorder beneath the couch cushions. I went through the trash. I even checked our shared credit card statement. And there it was. 2 charges to a boutique hotel on the other side of town, the Willow Inn, a cozy little place known for privacy and discretion, booked in the middle of the day when I was supposedly at work. I dug through the office drawer and found a folded note tucked inside an old book written in Ron's shaky scrawl. "I dream about your smile every night. Let's sneak away tomorrow at 2. I'll bring your favorite wine." I snapped a photo of the letter and kept going. Days passed. More notes appeared, a few even signed, "Yours always, R." The next week, I retrieved the recorder. Heart pounding. I listened through hours of mundane sounds. Then, voices. "Lila, you're sure Eric won't find out?" "Ron, He still thinks I'm just fixing your sink. He's too trusting." They laughed. I nearly broke the recorder in half. There was no more doubt, no more excuses. The woman I married, the life I had built, was burning right in front of me. But I wouldn't go down quietly. I would make sure they'd never forget the day they betrayed me. With every new piece of evidence, my heartbreak twisted tighter into something colder, something sharper. What had begun as disbelief was now solid rage wrapped in control. I wasn't going to lash out, no. I was going to ruin their little fantasy in a way they'd never forget. I crafted the plan slowly, precisely, like carving a blade out of stone. The idea came one sleepless night. I was staring at the ceiling, replaying Lila's laughter in the kitchen, not with me, but with him. That broken image lit something inside me. Our 10th wedding anniversary was coming up in 2 weeks. Lila had brought it up once, nervously, as if unsure whether I'd want to celebrate. "Oh, maybe something small?" she offered, feigning sweetness. "A dinner? Just the two of us?" "No," I said, forcing a calm smile. "Let's do it big. You deserve it." The relief in her eyes, the eagerness, it sickened me. She thought she'd gotten away with it. Over the next days, I spread the word. A celebration was coming. I called friends, co-workers, cousins, and our tight-knit neighbors, everyone who had known us as the perfect couple. And of course, I invited Uncle Ron. The night before the party, I gathered every bit of evidence into a neat manila folder. Voice recordings, the crumpled love notes, the hotel receipts. I even printed a screenshot of a text I'd intercepted using a phone mirroring app. It read, "Can't wait to taste you again tomorrow. You bring the whipped cream this time." Signed with a red heart emoji. I wanted to vomit, but I saved it all. The evening of the party, our house shimmered with string lights and soft jazz. Candles flickered on tables. Lila wore a midnight blue dress. I had always loved the same one she wore to our first anniversary. Her smile was radiant. False. Guests filled the house, laughing, chatting, clinking glasses. I circulated with a calm, collected face, shaking hands, pouring wine. Uncle Ron arrived fashionably late. He greeted people with that warm, grandfatherly grin. When he hugged Lila, I noticed the slight extra squeeze, the whispered words in her ear. My stomach clenched. I waited until the wine had flowed, until the guests had settled. Then I tapped my glass. Clink, clink. "Friends," I said, raising my voice just enough. "If I could steal your attention for just a minute." The chatter quieted. People turned toward me. Lila stood at my side, smiling wide, not yet sensing the storm. "We're gathered here to celebrate 10 years of marriage," I continued, voice even. "A decade of love, partnership, and trust." My gaze slid toward Lila. She stiffened. "And tonight, I want to honor that trust by sharing something very important with all of you." The air changed. Attention crackled, rising like static. Ron's smile twitched. Lila reached for my hand, but I pulled away and held up the manila folder. "This," I said, "is the story of how my wife and the man I once called family decided to betray everything I believed in." Gasps. One woman covered her mouth. Another guest whispered, "No way." Lila's face drained of color. Ron froze mid-sip. Over the last few months, Lila and Uncle Ron have been carrying out a secret affair right under my roof, behind my back, and behind all of yours. "No," Lila gasped, stepping forward. "Eric, please." I didn't flinch. I opened the folder. Here are love notes written in Ron's handwriting. I handed one to her sister, who read it aloud with trembling hands. "I can still feel your lips from last night. I dream about our secret meetings." I played a short recording. Their voices, their laughter, their plan to meet at the hotel. More gasps. Anger now. Betrayal rippled through the crowd. One neighbor said loudly, "Ron, seriously?" Lila was weeping now, makeup streaked. "It's not what it sounds like." But I wasn't finished. "And finally," I said, holding up the hotel receipts. Proof that while I was at work trying to build a future with my wife, she was playing house with someone old enough to be her father. Uncle Ron turned pale. I didn't mean." I cut him off. "You meant every word, every kiss, every lie, and now everyone here knows exactly who you are." Silence hung in the air like a blade. Lila collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Ron looked around and realized he wasn't a beloved neighbor anymore. He was the disgrace in the room. "I'm done," I said calmly, turning to Lila. "I want a divorce. Pack your things." With that, I left them both standing in the wreckage of what they thought was their hidden world. And for the first time in weeks, I felt peace. I walked out of that house with my head high, the sounds of murmurs and shifting chairs fading behind me. The truth had finally been set free, no more hiding, no more pretending. By the time I got into my car, I saw some of our former friends already exiting the house, glancing back with a mix of pity and disbelief. Some shook their heads in disgust. Others just looked stunned, processing the betrayal they'd witnessed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car, parked at the edge of Havenbrook Beach, watching the waves crash silently in the moonlight. I wasn't sure whether I felt liberated or completely hollow, maybe both. The next morning, I returned home briefly. The place felt like a crime scene still dressed in party remnants, but now carrying the cold air of disgrace. Lila was gone. The only trace of her was a note on the counter. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't know how to stop. I'll leave you alone, L." I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new rhythm, quiet, simple, but clean of deceit. I got a new apartment closer to work and brought Milo with me. He seemed confused at first, always sniffing around for Lila, but after a while, he adapted. Dogs are like that, loyal to a fault but resilient. I wasn't. At least not right away. I'd come home and just sit, not watch TV, not eat, just sit and think. I couldn't believe how badly I'd been fooled, how blind I'd been. I replayed everything. Our first kiss in the high school gym, the time we danced in the rain outside that food truck, the night she cried when we lost our first pregnancy. Had any of it been real? Some weekends, I'd walk aimlessly through Havenbrook's downtown district, passing cafes where we used to share brunch. I avoided places like the little bookstore she loved, or the boardwalk where we once carved our names into a bench. Even Milo seemed quieter than usual. He'd rest his head on my leg and just stare, sensing that something had shifted. But life, as it always does, had other plans. One Saturday, while walking Milo along the waterfront, a blur of color zipped out from behind a corner, a small bike, ridden by a girl no older than 8. She lost control and ran right into me. I hit the sidewalk hard. My elbow scraped the pavement and my jacket tore, but the girl, she had the worst of it. Her leg bent at a terrible angle, and she screamed in pain. Instinct kicked in. I dropped to my knees beside her, trying to calm her down. Hey, it's okay. You're going to be all right, I promise. I've got you." I called an ambulance and stayed with her, holding her hand the whole time. She was brave, but the pain was clearly overwhelming. I didn't leave until she was safely inside the emergency vehicle. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hi, is this Eric?" the voice asked. "This is Louise. I'm the mother of the girl you helped last weekend. I just wanted to say thank you. Really, thank you. I don't know what we would have done without you." We spoke for a while, and before I knew it, we had agreed to meet up for coffee. Louise was different. Warm, genuine. Nothing like the polished charm that Lila had always presented. She was a widow, having lost her husband, a local police officer, 2 years earlier. She worked part-time and was raising her daughter, Emily, on her own. I told her some of my story, though I left out the worst details. We laughed, shared a few awkward silences, then laughed again. That single coffee turned into weekly walks, then weekend lunches. And before I realized what was happening, I had started looking forward to every message she sent, every moment spent by her side. One Sunday, I offered to take them both to the local zoo. It seemed like a good chance for her daughter to get to know me better, even if I wasn't sure yet what this between Louise and I was becoming. Emily was full of energy. At the elephant enclosure, she insisted on sitting on my shoulders to get a better view. I carried her like that for over half an hour, and when she eventually dozed off, drooling slightly on my shirt, Louise and I exchanged a glance and a smile. A real smile. Not forced. Not faked. That day, something shifted. I felt it clearly. Maybe fate wasn't punishing me. Maybe it was pushing me toward something better. 6 months had passed since the anniversary party, since I exposed Lila and Uncle Ron to a room full of family and friends. Since I walked away from the ashes of our marriage and started something new, even if I didn't fully understand what that new was yet. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that alone was a blessing. Louise and I grew closer with time. What started as cautious connection slowly became something deeper. She never rushed me, never pressured me to define what we were. And yet, she was always there, a steady, patient presence. Emily, too, had warmed up to me in a way that surprised us both. She'd tell me about her school friends, her dreams of becoming a vet, and the endless facts she knew about marine animals. Sometimes she'd sneak into the living room while I was reading and curl up beside me, head on my arm, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I found myself smiling again. Not fake smiles, not polite ones, real, bone-deep ones that made my chest feel light. One sunny afternoon, while walking Milo through downtown Havenbrook, I passed by the old art gallery Lila used to drag me into. I hesitated, then kept walking. I didn't need those memories anymore. But a few blocks later, something stopped me cold. A woman stood on the sidewalk outside the convenience store, wrapped in a tattered coat. Her face was thin, drawn, her once shiny hair matted and dull. She was holding a handmade sign, her hands trembling in the cold. It took me a moment, but when I looked again, I realized the truth. It was Lila. I stood frozen, staring from across the street. She looked nothing like the woman I once knew. Her eyes were sunken, her cheeks hollow. She looked older, not just from time, but from pain, hardship, regret. People walked past her, most ignoring her completely. One man tossed her a crumpled bill. Another woman muttered something under her breath and hurried away. A group of teens laughed as they passed, one of them saying, "Isn't that the lady from that cheating scandal?" I felt a strange ache in my chest. I crossed the street and approached slowly. Lila didn't notice me until I was just a few steps away. Her eyes widened. "Eric," she whispered, her voice hoarse. I didn't expect." "Here," I said, handing her a hot coffee from the cafe on the corner. "You look frozen." Tears welled up in her eyes as she took the cup. She tried to speak, but her lips trembled too hard. We sat on the bench nearby. She told me everything. After the affair became public, she lost her nursing job. The clinic didn't want the bad publicity. Uncle Ron had moved away shortly after the party, claiming he needed a fresh start, which, I suspected, meant escaping the backlash. He'd left her behind. No one in town would rent to her. Most friends cut her off. Even her own sister, once so close, stopped answering her calls. With no income and no support, she'd burned through her savings fast. What followed was eviction, then nights sleeping in shelters, and finally, the streets. I listened, silent, unblinking. Part of me wanted to hate her still. Part of me had hated her for months, but watching her now broken, lost, that hatred melted into something else. Pity? Maybe. Sadness? Definitely. I know I don't deserve anything from you, she said through tears, but thank you for not walking away. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled a small envelope from my jacket. It had a little cash inside, not much, but enough for a week of food and maybe a cheap motel. I'm not doing this for you, I said gently. I'm doing it because I need to know I did the right thing. She nodded, accepting the envelope with shaking fingers. Take care of yourself, Lila, I said quietly. This is your second chance. Don't waste it. She looked up at me, eyes shining with something like remorse, or maybe just the bitter taste of consequence. I didn't wait for her to speak again. I stood and walked away, leaving her on that bench, clutching the warmth I had handed her, knowing full well that warmth wouldn't last forever. But mine would, because I had finally learned the difference between love and illusion, and I had chosen peace over pain. 6 months had passed since that cold morning I last saw Lila on the streets of Havenbrook, a ghost of the woman I once loved. I hadn't seen her since, but I heard whispers. People said she'd tried to leave town but couldn't find steady work. Her name had become infamous not because of what she did to me, but because of how it all unraveled. Public betrayal. Proof in front of everyone. That kind of disgrace doesn't fade in small towns. I didn't feel the need to chase updates. Whatever path Lila was walking now, it was no longer mine to follow. My life, on the other hand, had begun to bloom again. Louise and I were stronger than ever. We had moved in together not because we needed to rush anything, but because it felt right. Simple things like cooking dinner as a trio or watching old movies, while Emily dozed off between us, they became the pieces of a life I had once thought I lost forever. One evening, we took a walk down the very street where my heart had shattered that day. The same street where I had once peered into my own kitchen window and seen everything unravel. I stopped in front of the house now, dark and empty, the yard overgrown, the mailbox stuffed with forgotten flyers. That used to be mine, I said softly to Louise. She looked at me, unsure whether I meant the house or the life that had once been inside it. But it's not anymore, I added, and I'm glad. She squeezed my hand, and we walked on. Something had shifted deep inside me, a final release. What Lila and Ron had done wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a betrayal of trust, of family, of everything sacred in the quiet rhythms of daily life. I had given them both the best parts of myself. And in return, they took what wasn't theirs, dressed it in secrecy, and called it love. But love, built on lies, isn't love at all. It's rot. And eventually, rot crumbles everything it touches. That was the lesson, the one I carried into this new chapter of life. Trust isn't something to be handed out blindly. It's earned, protected, and honored. And when it's broken, especially by the ones you held closest, there should be consequences. Lila learned that lesson the hard way. She lost her job, her community, her future, not because I punished her, but because she punished herself with her own choices. Ron, last I heard, he moved across the state. Tried to rekindle his reputation at another Firehouse alumni group. But news travels fast these days, people know. And no matter where he goes, he'll always be looking over his shoulder, wondering who remembers what he did. I, on the other hand, moved on with peace. Because I didn't seek revenge for the sake of pain, I sought truth. I exposed the lie so it could no longer hurt me from the shadows. And in doing so, I made room for something honest. Louise and I eventually got engaged. Not in some flashy way, just a quiet morning at the lakeside, where I slipped a ring on her finger and she cried before even saying yes. Emily clapped and shouted, "Finally!" It wasn't the life I expected years ago. It was better. Because it was real. And that's the point of this story. Not just that people cheat. Not just that betrayal hurts. But that no matter how deeply someone wounds you, if you stay honest, stay strong, and refuse to let the darkness define you, life has a way of repaying you in ways you never imagined. I got my revenge, yes. but not in violence, not in cruelty, in exposure, in truth, in living better than those who tried to destroy me. Lila's smile once meant the world to me. Now it means nothing. But Louisa's smile, it means everything.